Will was a magicless loser born into a world where magic was everything and people without magical talents were treated worse than slaves. He was always lonely and awkward, but still had a childhood friend who he loved, but she moved on because he didn't have any magical talent. He still enrolls in a prestigious university with the goal of getting his crush back, but gets bullied there as well. Thankfully, he is saved when the headmaster shows him that he is a natural warrior with a sword in his hand, after which he starts honing his skills to become the strongest in the world. He heads off to a high-level dungeon where he engages with giant beasts who shoot magic spells at him, but he dodges them and uses his incredible speed and prowess with his sword to utterly style on the monster and slice it in half with a single slash. The next morning he goes to the classroom extremely tired, where the professor named Edward teaches them about the basics of alchemy and how to produce sulfur, which helps in the creation of explosives. Edward notices Will dozing off in the back, so he calls his name, but unaware about this, Will keeps snoring until Edward shouts his name, which surprises Will as he stands up immediately. Edward calls him out to the front and asks him to demonstrate what they were just talking about, and without any other choice, Will is forced to go in front of the entire class to demonstrate the process. Edward tells him that it's super easy and all he has to do is produce some flames and sulfur will be created. Will shakily takes out the wand from his ass and chants the spell to bring forth flames, but to his dismay, not even a small spark emerges from the wand. All the students start laughing at him as if he was a stand-up comedian, but the teacher tells them to shut up. Edward looks at Will with disgust as he claims that he has no idea how someone like Will can be so good at theory but utterly fail at any kind of practical magic, and wonders how Will even got selected for this academy. Suddenly, a red-haired boy named Sion takes out his wand and confidently points it towards the items on the desk before using his flame magic, completely burning them and creating sulfur, while Will cowers behind the flames. Edward tells them to not do anything without permission, as he immediately creates a huge crystal of sulfur with his magic spell. He tells them that magic is the most important thing in this world, as mages are heroes, and to survive at this academy, the students need to be good at magic, and fools who have no idea of how to control magic should simply leave the academy. After the class was over, Sion and his cronies walk over to Will and embarrass him by saying that he can only kill low-level dungeon monsters, but a classmate and childhood friend of Will's named Cole walks out and tells Sion to leave him alone, as he is much nicer than him and his group. Sion gets a bit flustered, but laughs it off, claiming that kindness and hard work won't get you very far without magic, before walking away with his goons. Cole and Will start walking while she tells him not to worry too much. But Will seems pretty used to this bullying as he looks towards the sky, claiming that it looks beautiful. It turns out that several years ago, the humans were trapped under a layer of darkness and never saw the sky, because they lived in fear of some evil spirits who cast a shadow on the entire world. Thankfully, 5 legendary mages stood up to the evil spirits, and after a huge battle, they managed to push them back and freed the humans from the darkness, showing them what the real sky looked like. These mages were known as Maja Vanders, and that title now passes down to the most powerful mages of this world. She remembers about the promise he made to one of his childhood friends named Elfie, who used to show him storybooks of Maja Vanders, and they made a pact with each other that they will become the Maja Vanders one day. She ended up keeping her end of the deal, as she had incredible talent, and she rose up the ranks quickly to become the youngest Maja Vander in the history and started living up the Divine Tower, while Will turned out to be far below average, barely sticking on to the dream and the promise. Later that day, he goes in to meet Professor Walk, who ends up screaming at him when he gets to know that this Harry Potter knockoff went to level 7 dungeons all alone, and tells him that one day he will get killed. Will falls to the ground and apologizes, but asks whether he will get the credit for it or not. Walk takes a sigh and awards him 2 credits for his troubles. But while Will was busy celebrating, Walk asks him whether he has still not given up on the dream to become a Vander. He claims that to even have a small chance of becoming a Vander, he needs to get admitted in the Upper Institute, and to do that he needs a lot of credits in writing, spell work, and fighting. If he is not able to use any spells, he will never get any credits for spell work, so no matter how many credits he gets in the other 2, he will never qualify. Will claims that no matter what, he is going to try, so Walk tells him that first he will have to graduate, but as far as he knows, he needs 4 more credits by the end of this week. This shocks Will, who immediately starts searching for monsters that can give him 4 credits, when Walk tells him that there is a monster called Baskerville on the 6th floor which hasn't been defeated yet. Will immediately hugs his teacher, but unbeknownst to them, Sion ends up overhearing this and decides to head out to the dungeons himself to kill the monster before Will, so he gets kicked out of the academy for not having enough credits. Later that evening, Will enters the cave alongside his familiar Kiki and tells her to use her nose to find the monster, but Kiki doesn't seem too keen on it, as last time when Will fought a Baskerville, she ended up getting burnt by its breath. On the other side, Sion and his cronies also enter the 6th floor, determined to find the beast before Will, so he gets kicked out. One of his underlings with pink feminist hair asks whether it's a good idea for just 3 mages to enter the 6th floor, but Sion looks at him angrily, claiming that he is one of the best mages in the class and can deal with it. He thinks angry racist thoughts while walking and tells his underlings to use their scan magic to find the location of the beast, when suddenly a huge monster appears and punches the spiky-haired boy so hard that he becomes a pancake on the wall. Sion is beyond shocked, unable to move, while the feminist starts screaming like a bitch in terror. Will overhears the scream and immediately gets up before running with the speed of lightning towards the noise as he gets worried about someone getting hurt. He turns around a corner when he spots Sion on the floor shooting fire blasts at the monster, who doesn't seem bothered by it at all. Will immediately recognizes the monster as the Sentinel, who is an extremely strong monster worth 10 credit scores, but wonders what it's doing on this level dungeon. He realizes that Sion's magic is nothing for the monster, as it completely ignores the flame blasts and keeps moving towards the terrified boy on the floor. He thinks about helping him when suddenly he remembers about all the times this asshat of a person ridiculed him for no reason. This makes him want to shut his eyes and pretend he never saw it. But he suddenly remembers Elfie, who told him that he is the kindest person she knew and gifted him a pair of glasses. This reminds him of who he truly is, and he puts on the glasses, while the monster raises his weapon to finish the cocky brat once and for all. He blocks the monster's attack just in time and forces it away to save Sion's life. While back at the academy, Edward enters Walk's room and tells him to immediately send his familiar into the dungeons, as Sion and his lackeys went inside to the 6th floor without permission. Walk realizes what has happened, but tells Edward not to worry as Will is also on the same floor. Back in the dungeon, Will clashes with the monster again and again, blocking his attack and outmaneuvering him before dealing a swift slash to his arm which slices a finger off. The monster angrily tries to attack, but Will dodges the attack as he moves through the air like an eagle. The monster finally catches Will, but Will manages to block the blow with his sword. He gets blasted back, after which the monster throws rocks at him, which he slashes through effortlessly. He jumps around the monster and manages to land on his back before stabbing him right through the neck. The monster starts flailing while Sion is beyond shocked to see Will's capabilities. Back at the academy, Edward is also shocked at seeing this, while Walk claims that Will is an outcast as he has no magic, but superhuman strength for a mage. He is as hardy as a dwarf, and his brain is so capable that he learns all the attack patterns of any race just by having one look at them. They watch as Will manages to slash off the monster's arm, and then calmly walks towards the giant sword on the ground. As Will picks up the giant sword effortlessly, Walk tells Edward that in a world filled with magic and wizards, Will is the only warrior. The monster shoots an energy beam out of its mouth, but Will manages to block it with the giant sword and slashes it at the monster, who gets sliced into little pieces and falls to the ground, unmoving. Will then walks over and gives Sion his helping hand, who looks still shocked, while Edward can't believe his eyes as he screams at Walk that a person without magic can never surpass a magician and storms off the room, while Walk realizes that Edward is on a large dose of copium right now. He knows that the story of Will is going to become legend as he turns the world upside down by making Wistoria the only place in the world where a wand and a sword meet. That night, Will remembers how when he joined this academy, he was laughed at by everyone for not having any trace of magic, and people always bullied him and called him a loser, claiming that he only got into the academy because he was friends with Elfie the Maja Vander. Those comments hurt him terrible, and he fell into depression when one day the principal of the school called in Will alongside Walk to have a meeting. She had a look at the boy with no magic talent herself, and wondered how he got into such a prestigious academy, but unlike others, she decided to test him out. She used her flotation magic to throw a dagger towards Will, who grabs it as if he was meant to hold it since birth. Walk looked a little confused, but the old lady was confident in what she was doing. She immediately covers Will with magical crickles ready to blast fireballs at him, which scares Walk as he thought this might be the end of the boy. But Will didn't skip a beat and immediately slashed all the magic circles around him in a single elegant slash before dropping back on his feet. Wok falls over in shock, while the old lady laughed, claiming that this boy was meant to hold a sword and not a wand. She tells them that she is going to let Will continue studying at this academy, while Wok will be his guardian since Will doesn't have any parents. Wok asks her whether it would be safe for a boy with no magic to study at a university filled with mages, but the old lady confidently tells him that Will can manage. Tears start flowing down Will's face as he looks up at the lady and simply asks whether he can ever become strong enough without magic to become a Maja Vander and climb the tower to reunite with Elfie, which brings a smile to the old lady's face. She tells him that if he has unwavering determination to climb to that level and a strong will to fight, there is still a chance for him to make that climb. This fills Will with a new fire and determination to become the strongest in this world. The next morning, he wakes up a little groggy but heads down to his class where Wok explains the workings of the academy. He tells them that to become a Maja Vander, they all first have to qualify to study at the Upper Institute, which opens a path for them to become the strongest mages and rule from the top. To reach the Upper Institute, however, they need to either create a new magic spell, or they need at least 7,200 credits in this academy, which is extremely difficult. He tells everyone that they shouldn't even dream of reaching the Upper Institute since none of them are even getting enough credits to graduate. That day Wok drilled them with supplementary lessons, after which Will was completely spent. He meets up with Call, who asks whether Wok's class was very difficult. Will sighs and claims that he made them repeat several lessons and gave them a bunch of homework, but it was all because they didn't have enough credits. Call claims that she likes Wok as at least he tries to help the students, whereas Ed would have simply left them to fail. Will laughs and they reach a corner, when they suddenly hear a ruckus and peek around to find Sion and his underlings surrounded by a bunch of students as they tell everyone that Sion defeated the Sentinel monster worth 10 credits all alone. All the students seem shocked and praise Sion for his strength, but he seems pretty stressed about it all as he is the only one who knows the truth about the situation and how Will is the one who defeated the monster while Sion was lying on the floor like a helpless baby. Suddenly he spots Will walking past alongside Call, and this immediately fills him with rage as he shoves everyone out of the way before grabbing Will by the collar and saying that what happened that day can't be true as Will is completely talentless. Call immediately comes to his defense and tells Sion to let him go. The brat clenches his teeth and takes his hands off of Will before walking away in anger, followed by his cronies. Call asks whether anything happened between them, but Will lies that nothing happened. Meanwhile, Ed goes into the Grand Master's office and tells her that Will should be immediately kicked out of the school. The Grand Master looks completely relaxed as she asks why does he think that way, but Ed replies that Will is a warrior with no magic abilities and yet is trying to become better than people with magic. He claims that a magic academy is no place for a warrior, but the Grand Master smiles and claims that kicking Will out in his 6th and final year would be very cruel. She takes out a register filled with information about the students and opens Will's page before noting that he has good marks in writing and has been gaining credits consistently even without having magic. She claims that this makes him an incredible student as not only is he keeping up with others, but he is outperforming them even after being at a major disadvantage. She tells him that even if he can't become a Maja Vander, he can easily become a scholar or a healer and help others. Ed claims that if he wanted that then he would have had no problem with Will, but Will wants to become a Maja Vander. The Grand Master thinks for a moment and claims that it can definitely be a problem and tells Ed to design a test for him. She tells him that he knows Will's secret now as well, so she will give him complete control over the place and way he takes his test. If he makes his way through Ed's test, he will stay at this academy, but if he can't then Ed can expel him if he wants. Ed tells her that he is not as lenient as Wokner before walking off with a smile on his face. On the other hand, Will is completely unaware of this plan and keeps going on with his day. Call helps him open his locker as it can only be opened and locked with magic, which he doesn't have. Call spots his sword inside the locker as he can't carry it in school and feels bad for him, but soon they both enter the library. He immediately starts revising the history of magic and also about the other races. Call tells him that he is already the best at writing and shouldn't stress too much, but Will knows that even if he loses a single credit, he will have no chance of qualifying for the Upper Institute. Moreover, he likes reading the story about the war between the dwarves and the humans, as even though the mages were superior both in number and in skills, The warrior dwarves still stood their ground and fought to the bitter end. Before they can talk more, Ed appears behind them like Severus Snape and tells Will to immediately meet up with him in the exam hall alone. Will follows him without a word, and when they reach the spell hall, Ed tells him that he is going to take a test. If Will manages to strike even a single blow on Ed, he will receive 5 credits for spell work. But if he fails, he will be expelled from the academy, as people who can't use magic shouldn't even look at Magia Vanders, let alone try to become one. Will is still shocked, but Ed doesn't wait a single second and conjures all his mana before creating a magic circle right beneath a shocked Will. Back inside the academy, the headmaster calls Walk in and informs him about what is happening. She creates a TV for him where he is shocked to see Will facing off against Ed. He dodges the magic circles beneath him, which explodes, but Ed pursues and keeps shooting exploding magic, while Will barely manages to escape, constantly running away from the mage. Walk tries to speak against it, claiming that it's too cruel and one-sided since Ed is one of the strongest mage in the kingdom and very close to becoming a Magia Vander himself. Ed uses another dark explosion, which Will barely dodges as he breathes hard from all the running, but realizes that he can't stay still. He starts running with all his might once again and circles around Ed before trying to land a spinning kick. But unfortunately, it gets completely blocked by Ed with his magic shield, as he blasts him away. He spits blood from his mouth as he sees Ed through his blurry vision, realizing that he is completely outmatched as both Ed's defense and offense are completely without any holes, and there is no way he can even scratch him. He tries to get up once again, while Ed gets ready to finish the battle, and overlaps the same spell multiple times to create a wall of explosions that Will didn't even know was possible. He starts running away, but the explosions blast him away once again as Ed keeps blasting him up in the air like a ping pong from one end to the other, damaging Will's body to the point where he falls to the ground almost unconscious. He tries to get up, cursing his weak magicless body as he wishes he had his sword right now to defend himself. Meanwhile, Cole walks back to her locker in order to leave for the day while she wonders what kind of lessons is Ed giving. She suddenly imagines Will getting tortured by Ed with whips when a gate opens, scaring her, but it turns out to be Kiki who seems hurt and is bleeding. She walks up to Will's locker and starts scratching at it, and Cole immediately realizes that there is something wrong. Back in the exam hall, Will is down on the floor while Ed walks up to him and puts his foot on Will's head, telling him to accept defeat, but Will pushes his foot away and tells him that he will never do that. He gets up once again and tells Ed that he will reach the pinnacle of magic with a sword in his hand because he wants to fulfill his promise to the person he loves. This enrages Ed even more as he gets ready to finish the battle, but just then Cole enters the hall and throws a sword towards Will. He immediately grabs it and then puts on his special glasses ready for a fight. Ed lashes out at him with his magic, but Will effortlessly slices through it, shocking the mage. This makes him burst with anger as he prepares to fire a barrage of explosions at Will, who gets scared by his teacher's look. Ed immediately starts blasting, but Will shows his insane speed and dodges the attack while remembering the Dwarf King who lost everyone in the battle and still kept going forward and landed a hit against a Magia Vander. He decides that he will do the same as he jumps up in the air, dodging all the attacks and explodes towards Ed, breaking his barrier with his sword as they both stop at each other's throat. Will breathes hard, with a wand in his face, while Ed is completely shocked as a small cut appears on his face. Angry at his own failure, Ed walks away telling Will that he gained 5 credits, while Will falls onto the ground as Cole picks him up, while he wonders how many more mages will he have to defeat to become the strongest. Will dreams about the day Elfie told him he was the kindest and bravest person she knew, before giving him the special glasses as her parting gift. It was the day she had to go to the tower forever, because she was a Magia Vander already. As she walked away slowly, Will cried out Elfie's name, telling her that he will definitely make it to the tower, even if the entire world tries tearing them apart. He promised her that he would come to her, and then they would see the sunset together, just like they promised each other in childhood. Tears flooded Elfie's eyes as she heard this, and she turns around, wiping her tears and telling Will that she'll be waiting for him. Soon after that, Elfie climbed up the stairs of the tower, and Will was left alone and heartbroken. Professor Werkner tried comforting him, but it had the opposite effect, and Will started crying. However, he promised his professor that this was the last time he was being a pathetic crybaby. Back to the present, Will is working early in the morning, delivering newspapers to the houses in the city. Just as he is done with the work on the street, An old and bulky man named Don greets him and tells him to do his best. Will then hastily climbs a flight of stairs and trips, sending all the newspapers in his bag flying. However, with his lightning-fast reflexes and nimble arms, he grabs all the newspapers in an instant. Unfortunately, one newspaper escaped his grasp, and as Will picks it up, he finds a news article about Elfie, who has just created another type of magic. She has earned the achievement of being the first mage in history to create 12 types of magics. Will is once again full of determination to work hard so that he can stand by her side, when he reads the article further and finds that the Upper Institute has issued an order to the Academy students, and the client of the order is none other than Elfie. Will freaks out on learning this and immediately runs to his dorm, where he asks his roommate Rosti to make a magic device for him. Rosti asks him why is he so excited, and Will tells him about the order Elfie has issued, so he is going to take part in it. He begins changing into his uniform as he tells Rosti that the order is to procure the cores of monsters called Frostwalkers that are found on the 4th floor of the dungeon. Apparently, Elfie needs them as catalysts, and every student who helps in procuring the cores will be rewarded. That is why Will wants Rosti to prepare a magic item that can help him clear the 4th floor. Seeing him so excited and straightforward, Rosti starts laughing. He was already working on the magic item that Will uses from time to time and hands it to him. Will thanks him and begins heading away, but Rosti stops him and stuffs bread into his mouth as he asks him to take care of himself. Will soon reaches the 4th floor of the dungeon, but it is already too crowded with dozens of students hunting down the Frostwalkers for their cores. Just as Will is about to join in the action, a huge explosion rattles him. It was because of Sion's attack that obliterated a bunch of Frostwalkers in one go, and while his lackeys suck up to him, Sion is not satisfied. He thinks about the fight between Will and the giant monster that fuels his rage and motivates him to become stronger. Unaware of this, Will really believes that Sion is cool. He thinks that there isn't anything left for him to hunt here, so he heads deeper inside the 4th floor, but comes face to face with giant penguin monsters. The monsters are hostile, so Will immediately draws his sword, wears his special glasses, and then lunges at them. With a few clean strikes, he manages to slash the penguin monsters with ease, saving the nerdy girl who was about to be killed by the monsters. The girl is dumbfounded at what she just saw. Will defeated the monsters using a sword and not magic, and that is beyond comprehension for her. Will approaches her, and the girl thanks him for saving her life, before introducing herself as Iris, a 4th-year student at the academy. At the same time, Walk is giving a lecture about the greatness of creating new types of spells, which alone is enough to make the mage who created the magic climb up the tower. He says that the new magic forms are named after their creators, and if anyone in the class ever creates a new magic, they will etch their name in history. The students begin gossiping about how this approach is not practical, because only the top 0.1% can manage to do that. Just then, a student named Rose asks Walk if Elfie, who has created 12 new forms of magic, is really good, and he says that she is good beyond belief. He calls Elfie one of the greatest mages in the entire history of their world, and Call remarks that the childhood friend Will is chasing after is really special. Her friend Rose teases her, asking if she is jealous that Elfie will steal her crush Will away from her. Cole freaks out on hearing that and gets scolded by Walk. Back in the dungeon, Will is walking with Iris, who has heard about the talentless book learner of the 6th year. Will is hurt, but he asks her if she doesn't feel any disdain towards a loser like him. Iris curiously asks how can she look down upon her savior. She says that even if Will doesn't have magic, she respects him for his special talents. He gets flustered and changes the topic to the order issued by Elfie. Iris affirms, saying that she wants to help the Majavander who hold up the sky. Her words force Will to think about how no one in this world has seen the true sky. The enormous magic power of the 5 Majavander cloaks their world, hiding it from invaders. What they see is the false sky, which is a great barrier that keeps their world safe. According to the lore, when the fake sky falls, darkness will shroud the world again, and chaos will follow. That is why the students who are out here meeting orders are not doing this just to get into good graces of the Majavander, but because they also want to support the sky from falling. He is snapped from his thoughts as Iris tells him that she has met Elfie before. She recites the story of how she was in trouble in the dungeon one day, as all kinds of nefarious monsters surrounded her. She was just waiting for her death, when suddenly, all the monsters were frozen. Iris turned around to see Elfie gleaming in the sunlight, looking like a goddess. Elfie helped her up gently, and ever since then, Iris stands her. While Iris is busy monologuing, Kiki gains Will's attention and leads him to a patch on the ground that has something curious. Iris asks him what is he doing, and Will shows her an ice fragment that the Frostwalkers leave behind as they move. The fragment here is really big, and now Will is certain that a rather powerful Frostwalker is ahead. He begins walking towards the cave in front of them, and Iris asks him how can he be so sure because she couldn't find any trace of the Frostwalkers using her search magic. Will tells her that magic is great, but it is not absolute, especially in the dungeon. He tells the girl that on top of this belief, he also has some knowledge and experience. She doesn't understand the significance of those things, but Will is completely alert because he knows what will happen next. A giant Frostwalker had been hiding on the ceiling, and it pounces at the unguarded Iris. However, Will had anticipated that, so he moves quickly, taking the girl to safety as the monster hits the ground. He jumps away to safety, and Iris recognizes the giant ice monster with dozens of eyes as a Frost Rex, which is the highest evolved form of a Frostwalker. The monster roars loudly, and Iris recalls that the Frost Rex is a monster worth 6 credits, which makes it really dangerous. In the meantime, the monster charges an ice beam and fires it ahead, but Will jumps out of the line of fire that is soon covered with sharp ice spikes. Will leaves Iris in a safe spot as he heads to fight the monster, but she stops him, telling him that physical attacks won't work on a Frost Rex, whose power is so strong that it can even freeze the sturdy dwarves just by one touch. However, as Will puts on the magic tool made by Rosti, he tells Iris not to worry, because he has defeated the monster numerous times already. He charges towards the Frost Rex, avoiding its ice beam by jumping up. Will lands on the ground behind the Frost Rex and speeds towards it, sliding underneath it. The monster, unable to find Will, begins shooting the ice beam indiscriminately, forcing Iris and Kiki to run away. Will then encircles the monster while it is distracted looking at the roof, and throws the magic tool over it, which gets attached to the monster's side through a hook. After that, Will slides under the monster, tightening a strong rope around it that cracks its skin. He keeps coiling the rope around the monster repeatedly, completely restraining it with the rope. The furious monster keeps on attacking recklessly, and once Will has succeeded in laying out the framework for his final attack, he stands in front of the monster. It uses a cold breath that begins freezing Will's skin, but he knows that his work is almost done. The Frost Rex is weak to fire and explosions, and that is exactly what he is going to use. He creates friction on the magic tool in his hand, sending a swift flame that travels down the rope and ultimately reaches the magic tool, which is a very powerful bomb. The magic tool explodes, shattering the giant monster into bits. As the smoke and steam settles, Will recoils the magic tool Rosti has made for him, and then goes to collect the ice core of the fallen monster. Iris had been watching all this, and on seeing Will defeat the giant monster without magic, her expressions suddenly change. Turns out she was not the naive girl she was pretending to be, but an agent of someone higher up the food chain. She has discovered that the talentless Will is stronger than what she had heard, and wonders how to report this to her superiors. However, as Will tells her that they should head back now, she resumes her act and goes with him. Later, Iris reaches the White Tower and goes to the room on the top, where 4 of the 5 Majavanders are seated on their thrones. They are looking for skilled people who can help their world prepare for the day the sky falls, and Iris works for them. She reports that she saw great talent in the magicless boy called Will, and recommends him to be let into the tower. 2 of the Majavanders are strictly opposed to this, but the white-haired guy named Zio is interested, and Elfie just smiles to herself. Zio is willing to let anyone who is skilled stand by his side, even if it is a dwarf, but the elf girl Elle is not happy to hear that because elves believe dwarves are barbarians. The redhead Carriot stops them from fighting, and says that they don't have to make any decision now, because they can wait to see Will's performance in the grand festival that is going to take place soon. Everyone agrees and leaves one by one, and only Elfie is left in the room. Iris was sent after Will by Elfie herself, and she takes out the giant ice core he sent her as she repeats her promise to wait forever for Will. If you liked this video, make sure to check out this brand new anime about an F-ranked loser, who turns out to be the strongest adventurer by killing monsters.